Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy TNL, and today we're gonna be talking about money habits that can quietly change your life over a long period of time. If I could sit down with every person in their 20s and tell them one thing about money, it would be money problems are really just money problems. And hear me out when I say this. They're usually life problems, wearing, a money costume. Because when people struggle financially, it's often connected to something deeper. Impulsiveness, a lack of patience, trying to impress people, avoiding reality, chasing comfort, not thinking long term down the line. Money just exposes these habits. And I think that's why your 20s are such an important decade, like financially. Not because you're supposed to become rich in that time period, but you know what I'm saying? Not because you're supposed to have everything figured out, but because, like, this is the decade where your financial habits become your financial future. Most people think that they're building a bank account. What they're really building is a relationship with money, and that relationship will follow them everywhere into their 30s, their 40s, into their relationships, into their careers, into their future family, into every major decision that they decide to make going forward. One of the biggest mistakes people make in their 20s is confusing income with wealth, because these are genuinely just not the same thing. A person making $50,000 can become financially stable. A person making $150,000 can stay broke forever, because wealth isn't about what necessarily comes in, right? It's about what stays. Modern culture will teach people to spend money the second they make it. You can get a raise, you can upgrade your car, you can upgrade your apartment, you can upgrade your clothes, your lifestyle, you know, and suddenly you're making more money than ever. But somehow you still feel broke, which is kind of crazy, right? Because you're making more, so statistically you should have more saved, right? That's because nobody talks about this lifestyle inflation. It's a very invisible trap, but it'll come and it'll get you. I ain't gonna lie. Every time your income rises, your spending rises too. So instead of creating freedom, you create bigger obligations, a bigger payment, a bigger bill, a bigger standard to maintain, and eventually you wake up making more money than you like had ever imagined, but feeling exactly like as trapped as before, which is kind of weird, right? I think one of the healthiest money habits you can build is learning to separate what you can afford from what makes sense. Those are two completely different questions. You might be able to afford something, but does it move your life forward? Does it create freedom, or is it just another temporary like dopamine hit you're getting? Because honestly, a lot of purchases aren't really purchases, they're just emotions. People buy things because they're stressed, they're lonely, they're bored, maybe they're feeling insecure, maybe they're trying to impress a girl, or maybe they're just trying to reward themselves. Maybe they're, just trying to feel successful, or just trying to feel something in general. And then nothing, you know, and then there's nothing wrong with enjoying your money. Life is to be lived, but if spending becomes your primary source of happiness, you're building your emotional life on something that constantly disappears. The excitement fades, the novelty fades, and then you need another purchase, and then you need another, and then another. Like, the people who become financially stable usually learn something important. Freedom feels better than flexing, a lot better. The ability to leave a bad job, the ability to handle an emergency, the ability to take a risk, the ability to sleep peacefully at night. I feel like that's real wealth in our society nowadays, because inflation is getting a little crazy. It's rising a little bit, but you know, and another habit that will quietly change your life is learning how to delay your gratification. And I know that sounds boring, obviously, but it might be one of the most important skills that you can develop, because modern life is designed to destroy your patience. Like, everything is instant now. You can instantly get food. Like, you don't even gotta leave the house or do anything. You can instantly shop. You can instantly have entertainment at your fingertips. You can instantly get approval from people on a dating site. But almost everything meaningful takes time. Building wealth takes time. Building confidence takes time. Building a business takes time. Building a strong body takes time. Building a good life takes time. You know, the ability to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term rewards is becoming rarer by the day. And it's becoming rarer, and it's becoming more valuable. I also think that people underestimate how much financial stress affects their mental health. Like, when you're constantly worried about money, everything feels heavier. Small problems feel bigger. Decisions feel harder. Your mind never fully relaxes. And that's why an emergency fund isn't just a financial tool, but it's a psychological tool. It buys peace. It buys a lot of breathing room for you. It gives you options, and options can reduce you panicking over time. Another habit I wish more people developed is investing in themselves before investing in like a status. A lot of people spend thousands trying to look successful. Sorry. Very few spend thousands becoming more valuable, learning skills, learning communication, learning sales, learning technology, learning how the world works, learning how like money works in general. Skills pay dividends for decades. Status usually expires. And honestly, one of the biggest financial mistakes people make in their 20s is spending too much time trying to catch up, to people they don't even know, right? Like, social media make everybody feel behind. It made everybody feel behind. Everybody. You open your phone and suddenly it feels like every 23-year-old owns a business. Every 25-year-old drives a Lambo. Every 27-year-old is making six figures plus, seven figures. It's like nonsense. You know what I mean? You're seeing highlights, like, not genuine reality of the every average person on the planet. You know, most people are figuring out life in real time. Most people are carrying debt. Most people are making mistakes. Most people are far less certain than they appear. Like, don't build your financial life around someone else's timeline. Build it around your goals, your reality, your future, because comparison is very expensive. It makes people rush into purchases, rush into debt, rush into lifestyles that can't actually afford. And if there's one thing I want people to understand, it's this: money is not the goal. At the end of the day, it's not the goal. Money is a tool. Freedom is the goal. Whatever freedom means to you, that is the goal. And getting money, a lot of money, however much, is the perfect way to see yourself towards that goal of freedom, basically. The goal isn't having the nicest watch. The goal is owning your time. The goal isn't having the most expensive car. The goal is having choices. The goal isn't impressing strangers. The goal is creating a life that is secure, peaceful, and genuinely yours. And the beautiful thing is that you don't need to become a millionaire tomorrow to start moving towards that life. You just need better habits, small habits, repeated constantly, for years, like, just over time, just get better. Because the truth is, most people don't become financially successful from one giant decision. They come financially successful from hundreds of ordinary decisions that nobody notices. The money they didn't spend, the skill that they learned over time, the investment that they made a few years ago, the debt that they avoided, the patience that they just practiced over time. And one day, those quiet decisions become a completely different life. A life with more options, a life with more stability, more peace, and more freedom. And that's why your 20s matter financially. Not because you need to be rich, but because you're building habits that your future self will live with every single day. And trust me, the future you is already watching. Thank you for your time, though. It's TNL.